What's up everyone, it's Mr. Lang. In this video I'm going to be taking you through the first 3 of 7 questions on this homework worksheet dealing with systems of word problems. So if you have the sheet, then you're ready to go. If you don't have the sheet, then you can print one out from our website online. Anyway, let's get started. Alright, first one here. The Have a Heart shelter has 5 fewer dogs than the Long Point shelter. Together, the shelters have 53 dogs. How many dogs are in each shelter? So the directions say solve by setting up a systems of equations. So we'll do that. And remember how these systems of equations work. Look at the final question here. It says how many dogs are in each shelter? So that kind of gives you a clue on what we're going to set our variables to be. So we have 2 different shelters, the Have a Heart and the Long Point shelter. So what I'm going to say is the Have a Heart shelter, I'm going to say H. So I'm going to say let H equal the number of dogs at the Have a Heart. And I'm going to abbreviate Have a Heart to H-A-H. So it's the number of dogs at Have a Heart shelter, and then the number of dogs at Long Point. So I will say L for that. So that's LP for Long Point. And it's important to do this let statement because in the problem there's no H or L or X or Y or any other variables, so it's important that you establish what these variables mean before you make the equations. So let's see here. We're going to get 2 equations out of this. It says the Have a Heart shelter has 5 fewer dogs than the Long Point shelter. So one equation here would be, well, the Have a Heart shelter, the number of dogs here, is equal to 5 less than the Long Point. So that would be L minus 5. And then the other sentence, together the shelters have 53 dogs. Well, if you count up the number of dogs that Have a Heart and Long Point, that should be equal to 53. So we could say L plus H equals 53. And now we've got a system of equations with 2 different variables and 2 equations, so we can solve this. Now we can solve this either by elimination, or we could do substitution. And we've already discussed kind of, the best ways, the best method to choose. And in this case, I think the easiest way is to be substitution. The reason being, they're not lined up perfectly, and one of the variables here, H, is solved. It's isolated. So what I'm going to do is put parentheses around that, and I'm going to substitute L minus 5 for H in this second equation. So it's going to be L plus, and then instead of H, I'm going to do L minus 5. And this equals 53. So yeah, I'm using substitution. Cool, so now I just got this 1 to solve here. So L plus L minus 5, that's going to be 2L minus 5 is equal to 53. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I get 2L is equal to 58. And when I divide both sides by 2, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. I get L is equal to 58 divided by 2 is 29. So that means the number of dogs at Long Point is 29 dogs. And we need to find both shelters. So we know that L plus 8 is 53. So I'm going to do 53 minus 29. And that gives me 24. For my H. And 29 plus 24 does equal 53. So to answer the question, we don't want to just leave it L and H because it didn't ask for L or H. It asked us like a real question with sentence here. So how many dogs at each shelter? I'm going to say the Have-A-Heart has 24 dogs. And the Long Point is 29 dogs. And that is my answer. All right, let's move on to number 2. All right, number 2. Pam has 2 part-time jobs. At one job, she works as a cashier and makes $8 per hour. At the second job, she works as a tutor and makes $12 per hour. One week, she worked 30 hours and made $268. How many hours did she spend at each job? And again, I'm always looking at this last sentence, kind of the question, to help me with my setup. So it says, how many hours did she spend at each job? Well, she's got the cashier job and she's got the tutor job. So this is going to be a pretty easy setup. I'm going to let C represent the number of hours as a cashier. And I'm going to let T equal the number of hours as a tutor. And now we just kind of got to go through this and figure out 2 equations based off of this. Well, first of all, if C and T are the number of hours at each job, she worked 30 hours in this week. So we know that C plus T must equal 30. So that's the first one. The second one has to deal with how much she makes per hour. So if I take $8 an hour times the number of hours she worked as a cashier, that would be C, that would represent how much money she made as the cashier that week. I'm going to add that to the $12 per hour that she makes being a tutor. So 12 times the number of hours she tutored would give that money. And all of that together should equal this $268. And there's my 2 equations. All right, so in this case, well, do we want to solve it by substitution or elimination? I think elimination is going to be the way to go here because we've got these lined up nicely, and elimination is pretty easy when you can do that. Now, it's not ready to go initially because we've got C and 8C. Those don't eliminate each other, and neither does T and 12T. So what I'm going to do is break out my red pen, and I'm going to multiply this whole thing by a -8. That'll make it so the C's eliminate each other. So let's see what happens with this. I'm going to have, the first equation is going to be -8C plus -8T. So I'm just going to say minus 8T equals -8 times 30 is -240. And the bottom one stays exactly the same. That's 8C plus 12T equals 268. So now I've got these ready to go eliminate, and I'm going to add these 2 equations. -8C and 8C eliminate. -8T and 12T gives us 4T. And when I add -240 and 268, that is 28. This is actually really easy to solve from here. I just divide both sides by 4. And I get T is equal to 7. So must have tutored 7 hours. And now that we know this, we know that she worked 30 hours in the 1 week. So 30 minus 7 from the tutoring is going to give us 23 for the cashier. So to answer the question, it's tutoring. She worked 7 hours. And for the cashier, she worked 23 hours. There's the answer. Cool. All right, one more to go. Number 3. Find two numbers such that the sum of the first and 3 times the second is 29, and the sum of the second and 2 times the first is 18. All right, so we've got these two numbers, the first number and the second number. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to say let x be the first number. You can use any variables you like. I'm just going to use x and y since we're not dealing with real world stuff here, and y equal the second number, just so we can keep it straight. I usually do this when it just says find two numbers. Alright, so the first one, the sum of the first and 3 times the second is 29. Sum tells me addition. The first is x. 3 times the second is 3y. Is equals and 29. The second one is the sum of the second and 2 times the first is 18. Well, the second is y. I'm going to write it right below here. And 2 times the first, that's 2x. And sum is addition, is 18. And there's my two equations based off of those sentences. And we need to solve these. So what I'm going to do is again going to use elimination because they are lined up pretty nicely. So I'm going to multiply, I don't know, I can multiply the first one by a -2, just kind of like what I did in the last problem. So the x's will cancel out. So what I'm going to get here, change back to blue here, the top equation becomes -2x minus 6y equals 29 times -2 is -58. And the bottom equation stays exactly the same. 2x plus y is equal to 18. I'm going to add these two equations. See what happens. The -2x and 2x cancel out. They're eliminated. The -6y and 1y become -5y. And this equals -58 plus 18 is going to be -40. And when I divide both sides by a -5, I get y is equal to +8. And this isn't so easy, so I'm going to sub in the y equals 8 into, I guess it really doesn't matter. I'm going to do the top original equation. So the original equation was x plus 3y is equal to 29. And I'm going to sub in the y is equal to 8 into this. So x plus 3 times 8 is equal to 29. So x plus 24 is equal to 29. And I know that's 5. So I got x is equal to 5, the y is equal to 8. So the first number for my answer here, the first num is 5, and the second num is 8. And there you go. So I've given you the first 3 problems on the homework. So on to your SIA question or questions. Finish the worksheet. So you're going to do 4 through 7 just like the directions say. Good luck and thanks for listening.